Hey Mixers, welcome back to another NFL video. Today I have 17 season-long player props for you. They're mostly touchdown props. I will dive into the other season-long props market a little bit later, and we'll try and get another video out for you guys. Once they put up those receptions lines props, we are really going to have a few more because I think that the receptions props are a really good value. So let me give you these touchdown props, and then we'll jump into some of the other props a little bit later in when those lines come out here in the next couple of weeks. All right, guys, now before we jump into these season-long player props, I want to just caution you and then give you a couple of tips for betting season-long player props in general. So obviously, your money is going to be tied up for a long time, about 6-7 months if you bet it right now, at least. So if you're betting these props, don't tie up too much of your bankroll in these. Also, you typically you're wanting to go for longer odds. But a lot of these props I'm going to give you right now are just even money props. So you could parlay them if you want to. Just be careful. Your money is going to be tied up for a long time, so just consider that. You may not want to play 17 touchdown props like I did. You might just want to choose 2 or 3 of your favorites and kind of roll with those. Some other tips for betting, season long is the lines are really low. So they look attractive. You're going to want to jump on them, but Vegas is baking in injury risk. Players might miss entire seasons. They might only play a couple of games. So check on your app what the rules are for those season-long player props, how many games those players have to play for those props to count. There's a lot of value in alt lines. So if you are playing on a platform that allows you to move the line up or down, or say somebody's prop line is at 6.5 and you think they'll get 10 touchdowns, you're going to get a lot of plus money for that, and it's worth throwing 1 unit on for season long if you really believe in that player. So there's lots of value on those alt lines. Don't count on last season production for this season's production. If you haven't done any research on how the draft affected these teams, how teams picked up players in free agency, I'd be a little careful on betting season long player props because you can't just go off of what somebody did last year. And then the couple of things that I found really helpful is take a stand on rookies, either one way or the other. I bet against rookies and I bet for rookies last year, and I did really great on both of those. So take a stance, use what you know of your football knowledge from watching the game, and take a stance on some of these rookies because this is where we have the edge over Vegas. They don't know yet how that player is going to perform, and neither do we. So we're all just guessing here. Vegas is not setting good lines because they don't know how this player is going to perform. So that gives us the edge. If we can make gut calls on these players, and if you're obviously not good at making gut calls, then don't do it. And then the 2 more tips: also take a stand on mixed backfields. So last year, I completely faded Zamir White. I said he was going to be the biggest bust. I also faded Zach Moss. So I was right on both of those. I got really lucky on Zach Moss because he did get injured. And then the one I was wrong about is Aaron Jones. I was fading Aaron Jones, and I didn't end up placing any bets fading him, but I did fade him for fantasy purposes. I wasn't drafting him. I was telling other people not to draft him. Obviously, that one was wrong. So, but take a stand on these mixed backfields, and because there's a lot of value if you're correct. And then there's a lot of value at wide receiver, and you're going to see a lot of wide receiver props in today's video because RB lines are more solid. And so the Vegas line is a better number, basically. Vegas is setting a good line because those touchdowns for running backs are a little bit more regular. Now, at wide receiver, they're definitely up in the air from year to year. So that is where we can take advantage of some of these lines if we feel like Vegas did not set them appropriately. Okay, so let's recap last year really quick. I did make 17 total season-long bets last year on player props, and I went 10-7, so that's a 58% record. Here are my wins. I did Zach Moss under 5.5 rushing touchdowns. He only had 2. Obviously, he did get injured and missed most of the season, so that was kind of a lucky win there. Malik Nabers over 69.5 receptions. He had 109. So that was my taking a stance on a rookie that I thought would do really well, and he did. I wouldn't say he almost doubled that number, but he clearly surpassed that number. Sam Laporta over 6.5 receiving touchdowns. He started the year off really slow, only had 7. So that one was pretty sweaty. Najee Harris over 828.5 rushing yards. People were thinking Jaylen Warren was going to take a bigger chunk out of Najee's workload, and that just wasn't the case. So he did get over 1,000 yards again. And then Drake London over 5.5 receiving touchdowns. I just thought that was way too low for a top tier player like Drake London. And I felt like the Falcons were going to make a playoff push, which they didn't get to the playoffs, but they did have a decent season, and Drake London did score 9 touchdowns. Jaden Daniels, the rookie, over 550.5 rushing yards. I slammed that one, and he had 891. Amon-Ra St. Brown, over 7.5 receiving touchdowns. Obviously, he had double-digit touchdowns the year before, and so Vegas was expecting a lot of regression. I was expecting him to continue to play at the high caliber that he played at, and he did have 12. Austin Eckler, under 6.5 rushing touchdowns. He only had 4. I was all in on Brian Robinson, and that one was a little scary because obviously Austin Eckler took the lead role for a little while, but he also was injured for a little while. So I was baking all of that into this under. And then Trey Benson, under 499.5 rushing yards, 291 is all he had. I just felt like James Conner, when he was healthy, would be the lead back. I didn't think Trey Benson was going to be eating into his workload at all, and that was the case. Now this year, that may not be the case because we're going into Trey Benson's second year. So he might get a little bit more work this year. And then Adam Thielen, under 64.5 receptions. He only had 48. I don't know what his number will be this year, but I guarantee it won't be anywhere near 64. It'll probably be down around 50, and I might fade it again this year. So my losses, I did have 7 losses. Jaylen Warren, over 625.5 rushing yards. I just felt like they were both, Najee and Jaylen, both were going to go over their lines. He only had 511. Tank Dell, over 4.5 receiving touchdowns. He only had 3. Obviously, he did end up getting injured, so he probably would have gotten there. Anthony Richardson, over 550.5 rushing yards. He had 499. So if he had played the whole season, if they hadn't pulled him, he would have easily gotten there. Even through his bad, horrible quarterback play, he still would have gotten there. Michael Pittman, over 4.5 receiving touchdowns. He only had 3. I don't think he would have gotten there with Anthony Richardson or without him. The Colts just had such a bad offense last year through the air. Bijan Robinson, under 60.5 receptions. Kirk Cousins had never thrown 60 balls to a running back ever before in his career, so I was betting on that again, and this was the worst loss ever. He ended with 61, so he killed me by 1 reception. Michael Penix threw to him just as much as Kirk Cousins did, so I can't even blame Michael Penix. He just got 61 and killed us there. Kaimi Fairbairn, this was my worst bet for the season. I bet under 5.5 50-plus field goals. He had only gone over that once in his entire career, and he killed me in the first 4 weeks. He had 13, so that was the worst bet of the year. And then Chris Olave, over 5.5 receiving touchdowns. He only had 1, and obviously he was out most of the season with a concussion. So that's how last year went. Let's jump into this year, and I'm going to start with my least favorite bet that I've already placed, and then end with my favorite bet. So my least favorite bet that I've already placed is Brian Thomas Jr. over 7.5 receiving touchdowns. I placed this bet before the NFL draft, so I didn't know he was going to be playing side by side with a Heisman winner. You can now get this line at 6.5, and obviously I do like it at 6.5. I think he could still get over the 7.5 number, but knowing that Travis Hunter's on the team, I probably wouldn't have made that 7.5 bet. He did have 10 last year. The entire team only had 19, though, so I expect that percentage to drop down a little bit. The Jags were, though, bottom 5 in receiving touchdowns in 2024, so if they can pick up the pace a little bit this year, which I think they can, then he might be able to get, double-digit touchdowns again this year, maybe 10. So I like the 7.5 line that I bet, but I probably wouldn't bet it now if I could for even money, since you can now get the 6.5, obviously. But 7.5 for plus money, I might take a shot on that. Our next one here is Jaxon Smith-Njigba, over 5.5 receiving touchdowns. This is 6.5 in some places, so if you want to fade this, you could go under 6.5 on a couple of different books. But I like him over 5.5, and that 5.5 line is still available. He had 4 and 6 in his first 2 years, and there's a lot of uncertainty in Seattle, but what we're not uncertain about is that Jaxon Smith-Njigba is now going to become one of the primary targets in Seattle. Last year, he had DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett at times, obviously leading the team in those targets because they had been there for so long, and Jaxon Smith-Njigba was the new guy. Well, Seattle got rid of both of them. They obviously liked what they had in Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I do not expect Seattle to be a good team this year. but I do expect Jaxon Smith-Njigba to get into the end zone, hopefully at least 6 times, because that's what I bet on. The next one here is Travis Hunter over 4.5 receiving touchdowns. I just like to take shots on rookies. I like to have money on rookies. Typically, a lot of people will bet on rookies because their lines are really low and the lines will move. So if this starts to move up to 5.5, 6.5, I probably wouldn't take it. But right now it's available at this 4.5 number. I think that Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter could be similar to a Bengals offense. So they could be the Jamar Chase and the T. Higgins if Trevor Lawrence can be the Joe Burrow. And obviously, I don't think that any of those players are at the same level as Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow right now. But I do feel like they could resemble the Bengals in their play style. So he was an amazing pass catcher in college. Obviously, if you watched him, which I did, he made some really crazy catches. So I just feel like he's going to be able to win in like contested catches or like some bad throws. So if Trevor Lawrence makes some bad passes, Travis Hunter's still going to be able to catch him because he's kind of a freak. He just catches a lot of weird balls. So I think he's going to play on offense more than we think. The next one here is going to be another rookie, Ashton Genty, over 7.5 rushing touchdowns. It's 8.5 in some places, so I do expect this line to move up as people start to bet on the rookies. The Raiders only had 10 rushing touchdowns total all of last year for the entire team. But plenty of rookie running backs have scored 10 touchdowns in their first season in the last 25 years, including a lot of big names, like Adrian Peterson, just a lot of them, like double digits. So he can definitely get there. They're definitely going to be feeding him the ball. I don't know if I want to bet on his rushing yards, but it's set over 1,000. I think it's hovering right by 1,000. And so if he gets 1,000 rushing yards, I do think he can put up 8 for us here. It's just a matter of like how many opportunities at the goal line he's going to have, because he's clearly going to be the workhorse running back for this team. The next one here, another rookie. I know I'm throwing a lot of rookies at you guys, but there's a lot of value in rookies because their lines are set so low. Tetairoa McMillan over 4.5 receiving touchdowns. Last year, the Panthers had 22 receiving touchdowns. Thielen had 5. Leggett had 4. Jeanty had 3. 2 years ago, they had 13 total touchdowns. Chark was still able to pull down 5, and Thielen still pulled down 4. So I do think that McMillan is probably going to have a slow start as he gets acclimated to this team. But I do believe by the end of the year that Tetairoa McMillan will be the primary target earner on his team, and probably in the red zone specifically, because Tetairoa McMillan, if you don't know, is built like Mike Evans. Like, he is a bigger wide receiver with a huge wingspan. And so I think he's going to be able to rake in some balls for Bryce Young and get those touchdowns. I think at least 5. I think he can get a lot more than that. But the fact that old man Thielen was able to get 5 and 4 in his 2 years there, I think that Tetairoa McMillan can get 5 here. Next, we have Garrett Wilson over 4.5 receiving touchdowns. He had 4, 3, and 7 in his past 3 seasons. So his best season was last year with Aaron Rodgers. I'm not trying to make the argument that Justin Fields is better than Aaron Rodgers as a passer, but he should be hyper-targeted in this offense. And I do think the Jets are going to have a hard time scoring touchdowns this year, but he has the speed and the skill to take one to the house like in just 30% of his games. So he just needs to score a touchdown in 1/3 of his games, and he hits this number for us. I don't think that's too much to ask from Garrett Wilson. Our next one here is going to be Brock Bowers over 4.5 receiving touchdowns. It is 5.5 in some places. He had 5 last year with quarterbacks like Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. Now he has Geno Smith. I'm not super confident on this one because I do think that this offense, like all the turnover with the coach, the quarterback, the RB1, it's good. There's going to be a lot of changes. But one thing we know for sure is that Brock Bowers is like an alien. He is like an elite tight end. He was exactly what was promised when he was coming into the league. And I think that Brock Bowers will probably be the first drafted tight end for years, just like Travis Kelce was and Gronk before that. I think that he's that good. I think that he's such an athlete. And he's a huge target. So he's an easy person to dump it off to if Geno Smith is ever in trouble. The next, we have Malik Nabers. We cashed a few bets on him last year. We're going to go right back to him. Over 6.5 receiving touchdowns is where I got the line. It's now at 7.5. You cannot find this anymore at 6.5. So maybe stay away from this one now since it's moved up. He did have 7 last year. The entire team had 15, so he had a 47% target share for touchdowns. So by comparison, JJ again has 29%, Chase has 39%. So I expect that to drop, that percentage, but I also expect the total team touchdowns to go up a little bit. The Giants were dead last in receiving touchdowns in 2024, so their schedule did not really improve this year, and I'm not so sure that they got a quarterback upgrade. Everyone's talking that they're getting a quarterback upgrade from Daniel Jones to Russell Wilson. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. Russ definitely probably will pass the ball more. Definitely probably. He'll probably pass the ball more than Daniel Jones, but I don't know that he's necessarily that much better. And he was not able to get George Pickens over this line last year, and neither was Justin Fields. So I don't know, but Malik Nabers is one of the best receivers in the league, in my opinion. So I want to take a shot on him. I want to have some money on him. One of my favorites, which, don't get mad at me for this, but it's not a popular pick, but for some reason. But Brock Purdy over 24.5 passing touchdowns. You can now get this at 23.5. So you can get an even better price than what I paid for this prop. He had 13, 31, and 20 in his last 3 seasons. Obviously, the wheels fell off the bus for the 49ers last year, but in their Super Bowl run season, Purdy had 31. That first season when Purdy only had 13, he only played 9 games. So that was a 24 touchdown pace. And then he only played 15 games last year. So he probably could have ended up with like 23-ish last year in the worst year that they've had since Brock Purdy's been the quarterback. The 49ers have a cupcake schedule. It is so easy. So I think easily he could go over 28. So if we see an alt line for like 27, 28, I will probably be betting that as well. We also know that he could throw a short screen pass to McCaffrey that McCaffrey runs 70 yards in for a touchdown. So I just think Brock Purdy has a lot of upside here. Let's take a look at his schedule. Seahawks, Saints, Cardinals, Jaguars. He should be able to score in all 4 of those games at least once. Rams, maybe, maybe not. Bucks, yes. Falcons, I don't know. Texans, maybe. Giants, yes. Rams, maybe. Cardinals, yes. Panthers, yes. Browns, yes. Titans, yes. Colts, yes. Bears, maybe. Seahawks, yes. So he's scoring in more than half of these games. I do think he's going to have several 2-touchdown games, probably some 3-touchdown games this year. He just has such an easy schedule. So I really like that one. I did make Brock Purdy the thumbnail of this video. But it is still not my favorite player prop yet. So we're still getting better and better. Bo Nix over 22.5 passing touchdowns. This is now at 24.5. So you can't get the 22.5 line that I got. Again, I placed these bets before the NFL draft. He did have 29 last year and went to the playoffs as a rookie. He was flirting with 4,000 passing yards as well. So the Broncos drafted another elite cornerback with their first pick in the NFL draft. And so now they have potentially 2 of the best cornerbacks in the league. They're going to have one of the best secondary defenses in the league. They also have a decent run defense. So I expect Bo Nix to have lots of opportunities on the field to score for his team. Next, we have Justin Fields. This is the only non-touchdown prop that I have for you right now. Over 550.5 rushing yards. The line you can get anywhere between 550.5 and 649.5. So if you want to fade, you can take that higher line and fade. His year 1 with the Bears, he played 12 games. He had 420 yards. That was a pace of 595, so he would have gone over this line. Year 2, he played 15 games, 1143 rushing yards. That's on pace for 1295. That's like running back status. Year 3, 13 games played, 657 yards, on pace for 859. And then his year with the Steelers, 10 games played, 289 rushing yards, on pace for 491. So he would not have gotten there with the Steelers last year. I think it's pretty clear from what the coaches have said at the Jets that they are going to let Justin Fields do his thing. They are going to let him run. They're going to let him, the Steelers were afraid of letting him run because they didn't want him to fumble the ball. I don't think the Jets have that same concern. I mean, they don't want him to fumble the ball, but I think they're going to allow Justin Fields to run. And this is a really low line for someone who has put a 1,000-yard rushing season up on the board as a quarterback. And then we have Drake London over 6.5 receiving touchdowns. Remember last year the line was 5.5, but this year it's already going up to 7.5 in some places. He had 4, 2, and 9 in his 3 seasons so far. He has a huge red zone target share on his team, which only went up in the small sample size we have with Michael Penix as the quarterback. And he has the best backup QB in the league with Kirk Cousins. So if Penix goes down, Kirk Cousins is going to step in here, and he got him 9 touchdowns last season. So I think that this is a no-brainer. Drake London over 6.5 receiving touchdowns. I'm embarrassed that this line is even so low for him. This should be 7.5 at least. Jaylen Waddle over 3.5 receiving touchdowns. This has gone up to 4.5. So my 3.5 line is not available anymore. 5.5 in some places. So this is going up even higher. So I would probably just stay away from Waddle this year because that higher line probably isn't worth the value. He's had 6, 8, and 4 and 2 in his last 4 seasons. He obviously didn't have a full season the last 2 years, only 14 and 15 games. So if he had played a full season, I think he easily, even in that disaster season last year, he still would have gotten to 4 if he had played all 17 games. So next we have CeeDee Lamb. I think the Cowboys are going to make a bounce back. Obviously, George Pickens probably will score some touchdowns. Jake Ferguson's going to score some touchdowns, but CeeDee Lamb is also going to score some touchdowns. This 6.5 line no longer available. I made these before the draft. Next year, I'll make the video a lot earlier, but I hadn't started my channel this year back then. So next year, I'll get these to you as early as possible. It's 7 to 7.5 now, and I still like it. He had 5, 6, 9, 12, and 6 in his 5 seasons in the NFL. His touchdowns obviously depend on Dak's health. So if Dak can stay healthy, CeeDee Lamb's going to go over this number. If he can't stay healthy, he probably won't go over this number. Although he almost did last year, even without Dak the whole season. Obviously, CD also missed a few games. With Pickens, I think that Pickens he elevates the entire offense because CeeDee Lamb, if you watch the video last year and the year before even, he was literally being triple covered at times. So it was really tough to get him the ball, and especially in the red zone, of course. Now, George Pickens is going to be able to draw off those defenders. They are not going to be able to triple team CD anymore. Next, we have Lad McConkey over 5.5 receiving touchdowns. It's 6.5 in some places, but you can still get the 5.5 line. He had 7 in his rookie season. I just don't understand this line at all and why it hasn't moved. He only needs touchdowns in like a third of his games to go over this line. Yeah, I mean, this is a smash for me. Let me know if you think I'm completely wrong about Lad, but that's a low line for him. Nico Collins, over 6.5 receiving touchdowns. This is one of my favorite bets. It's 7.5 in some places. This is one of those that I will probably be betting 10 plus on. He had 8 and 7 in his past 2 seasons, despite only playing at most 15 games. If he can play all 17, I do think he can easily get over 10 or get to 10. I also think that obviously the Texans still have offensive line issues, but they did draft some good little wide receivers to fill out their wide receiver room. So I do think that there will be a lot of distraction, and I don't think that those wide receivers that they drafted and that they traded for, Christian Kirk, have the same kind of talent as Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs had. So I do think Nico is going to command those valuable touchdown targets. And then my favorite bet of the year, I have no idea how this is still available. Drake Maye over 19.5 passing touchdowns. It is 20.5 in some places, so that line is on the move. He had 15 in 10 full games played last year, so that's a 25.5 pace for a 17-game season. If Drake Maye had started every game last year, he would have gone way over this number. So I'm not understanding why they're giving us this line when the Patriots have the second easiest schedule in the NFL this year. Let's take a look at their schedule. First, week 1, Raiders, hosting the Raiders. He should be able to score on the Raiders. The Dolphins, he'll be able to score on the Dolphins. The Steelers are going to be a tough team. The Panthers, he should be able to score. The Bills, I don't know. It's a division game, so they might be able to score, maybe not. The Saints, yes. The Titans, yes. The Browns, yes. The Falcons, maybe. The Buccaneers, yes. The Jets, maybe. The Bengals, yes, they should be able to score. The Giants, definitely. The Bills, maybe. The Ravens, maybe. The Jets, maybe. The Dolphins, yes. So, I mean, there are a lot of opportunities for Drake Maye to score touchdowns this year, and I cannot believe we're getting this 19.5 line. It should easily be 22.5, in my opinion. So here is the recap. I am not going to go over every single one of these individually, but go ahead and take a screenshot. These are my favorite bets that I've made for the NFL season so far, season long, and most of them are touchdowns. I am going to jump into the passing props, the rushing props, the receiving props, and of course, we're going to get some good value on the receptions line props when they come out. So I will hit you guys up with a few more of these probably in the next 2 weeks or so as I go through and place these bets in and really sift through them. But I do think there's a lot of value in the touchdown calls. Thanks, guys. Let me know which ones are your favorite and which ones you don't like or don't agree with down in the comments. Please like and subscribe. My picks will always be free to you no matter how big this channel gets. So I appreciate the free little things you can do for me, like liking the video, leaving a little comment, subscribing, of course, sharing the video with any friends that you think might like it. Thanks, guys.